Welcome to the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast, a podcast featuring interviews with equestrian authors who love all things horses and writing about them. In each episode, you'll hear inspirational stories from horsebook authors, including writing advice and marketing tips to help you write your very own horsebook. If you're an author, aspire to be an author, or simply love horsebooks, then you are in the right place. I'm your host, Kade, and creative writing makes my spurs jingle. Hi everyone, welcome to the Equestrian Author Spotlight show. I'm Kade, and today I am so excited to have my friend and fellow American Horse Publications member, Hope Ellis-Ashburn, on the show. Hi, Hope.
Hey, Carly.
Yay, I'm so excited to have you here today. So I'm going to just hop in and read your bio really quickly to give some background, and then we'll get into the fun stuff, which are the interviews.
That's great.
Hope Ellis-Ashburn holds a Master of Science degree in Agricultural Education from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and a Bachelor of Science degree in Horse Science from Middle Tennessee State University. Hope possesses a teaching credential in Agricultural Education. While attending MTSU, she was a member of the horse judging and equestrian teams. She is also a former award-winning extension agent with UTK. Hope began her freelance writing career in 2015. She has produced work for American Quarter Horse Journal, Arabian Horse Life, Sidelines, US Equestrian, and Hoofbeat magazines, and the Horse.com blog. She is the author of 2 books, The Story of Kimbrook Arabians, and her newest release, Always Hope, How Dairy Cows and Arabian Horses Inspired Grit in a Young Girl's Life, which spent several days at the top of Amazon's hot new release chart in equestrian sports. She has been a horse owner for over 30 years and has ridden and competed in a variety of disciplines, including Western, English, halter, dressage, hunter, and jumper. She currently owns a half Arabian mare, Sally, and a donkey, Harmony. She and her husband, daughter, and an assortment of pets live on her husband's family farm where they raise Black Angus cattle. Their farm has been in continuous operation by the same family for nearly 200 years. They make their home in a remodeled 1927 farmhouse that once belonged to her husband's grandparents. Wow, Hope, that is such a cool bio. I mean, you are in it. You are like the classic live in the land, work in the animals lady, which is so cool, and a very accomplished writer. I can't wait to dive into the interview and ask you some questions about freelance writing. I think a lot of authors actually have some experience, and a lot of the authors I met do actually do freelance writing on the side. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about how did you get into your freelance writing career in the horse world? Like, how did all that start? I mean, you obviously have the educational background, but where to come from? How'd you get interested? How'd you start?
Well, in 2015, when my first book came out, I had not been back to the Kimbrook Arabians farm, which is was a part of the Milky Way farm in many, many, many years since I had worked there. And my husband took me back there as a Christmas present to an open house that they were having at the mansion there.
Ooh.
And I had just, all the memories came flooding back. And when we got home, I just said, I'm going to write a book. It just came to me that this was what I needed to do to kind of document that particular time there. And so the book kind of predated just by a few short months my freelance writing career. But I wrote the book and got it published and was having a lot of fun with it. And didn't really have plans to go further or advance with anything. And then that spring, I went to a horse show with a friend, and I actually brought my half Arabian mare, Sally, that we kind of talked about there in the bio. And we had not shown in a while. You know, life just gets busy, and we weren't ready for the show, but what the heck, we'll go to the show, and it's just a small, fun show. We'll have a great time. And at the end of the show, it was our last class, and we were having an okay day, all things considered, lack of preparation and all those things. But we were having an okay day, and she decided that in the last class, I am done. I'm finished here, and I'm ready to go home. And so she was kind of being a little diva there in the show ring, and we survived, and everything went okay. But when I got home, I thought, this would make a great story for Equus, because I always enjoy reading those true tale stories and EQ back page stories on Equus. And so I wrote up a little article not too long after that and sent it in. And a few weeks later, I was stunned to get an email from the editor, and she said that she, liked the story. She would like to offer me some money. And immediately I was, hold up, people actually get paid for this. So
wow. So it's sort of like a happy accident that you
yes.
got into this. Wow.
Yes. So after we got the story edited and sent some pictures in, and all these story ideas started coming to me, and so I wrote up some pieces. Equus happens to be a publication that they don't necessarily do pitches all of the time, and so they like finished manuscripts sent to them. So I sent them a few manuscripts just to see what they thought, and not very long after that, received some email responses. We like your writing style. We'd like to publish these, and do you have anything else? And so that's kind of how it started from there. It kind of snowballed from there, and it's just a happy thing to have occurred at that particular time.
Wow, that is so cool. Now, I wanted to ask you too. So, have you always enjoyed writing? Because your degrees are in like science and agriculture. So like, where does the journalist, writer, author part of you come from?
Well, growing up, I really enjoyed writing short stories just as a kid, and my mom still has them in her attic at home, and some of those she's given to me. But it really kind of all got started when I worked for the Extension Service. And so I wrote news stories and news columns for them. And that's kind of how I started exploring the writing piece a little bit. And then when I left the Extension for a while, that just kind of all got set aside. And then it picked back up when I wrote the book and started doing some freelance pieces.
Okay, yeah. So you've always enjoyed writing, and then you got some experience doing that sort of style of journalism and writing in one of your career paths. So that kind of set the table for feeling confident to pitch a big horse publication like Equus with a personal story of your experience with your naughty pony, right?
Yes.
Well, that is really, really cool. So I wanted to expand on that a little bit more, and and ask that. Obviously, in your bio, you've written for some very prominent horse publications, horse magazines, and then so I'm interested in what are your favorite topics to write about? Do you have like a favorite topic, or do you kind of just have like stories pop up and then think about it? Because you mentioned pitching, so do you have to pitch these stories, or do you have working relationships? Like how's that world fit together?
That kind of varies really depending on the publication. Some of the publications that I write for do like pitching ideas to them, and so others prefer finished manuscripts like we talked about with Equus, and then some I actually get assignments on. So it really depends on who I'm working with. And as far as my favorite stories, I love writing the true tales, because that whether that's for Equus or another publication, that's just kind of sharing stories about real life with horses. And I kind of think that is one of my favorites, just because I'm not a big barn. I don't work with a trainer. I'm just your average adult amateur, and I like sharing stories, with everyday life with my horse. But I also really enjoy the science background in me comes out when I write about things like I recently had an article published on toxic pasture plants that I'm really proud of with US Equestrian. I've written stories on trailer tires. I've written health pieces, which that kind of comes back into the science piece of it too. So really just the whole spectrum.
Yeah, and then actually last night I've signed up to your newsletter for Red Horse on a Red Hill, and I saw a very interesting article that you just have written about women. Can you talk a little bit about your most recent article? I found that one fascinating.
Sure. So I just finished this piece for Arabian Horse Life, and it's just out, like hot off the presses. And it was over 40 and fabulous. And I reached out to the whole beginning with the article. The assignment was to write about people who were over 40 competing at the top of their sport, and specifically with Arabian horses, no matter the discipline. And when I reached out, just a plethora of women responded. And it was really kind of, we didn't have any male respondents at first, and until I was able to interview Michael Byatt, which was also really exciting. He's kind of iconic in the breed. But I had these dynamic women that responded. And oh my goodness, it's amazing how we all kind of get to the same place in different ways with horses in our lives and kids and marriage and all those things. And it was just fantastic to talk to them, and inspiring, because you start to think, okay, over 40, I am still fresh and young and I can do all the things. So it was neat.
I love that. That is so great. And I think there should be a bigger spotlight on older equestrians and what we're doing, because this is a lifelong journey, the love of horses. You know, it's not
Absolutely.
just, you know, it's like sometimes we take a break to go to college or maybe to raise children, but it's always there. It's always in the background running, like this love of horses. I think we're born with it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what was it really interesting to me is you first wrote a book and then started your freelance writing. I mean, that is, you know, that is like a big accomplishment. You know, it's like for a lot of people, thinking about writing a book is like kind of scary, you know, and like an article might seem a little less daunting. I mean, of course the research goes in and your writing still has to be stellar, but you wrote the book first. And it sounds like something that you're really passionate about, and you're particularly passionate about Arabians. Can you talk about a little bit about your first book? And you did mention, you know, a Christmas gift tour to the farm. Can you talk a little bit about just like where that all came from for you?
Sure. So when I was, so this kind of gets into a little funny story about my first Arabian horse. And I'll try not to get teary-eyed with the story. But when I was growing up, I grew up, I'm in Tennessee, in the Sequatchie Valley of Tennessee. And predominantly we have Tennessee walking and racking horses. And my first horse, or first pony rather, was a spotted saddle horse. She was a racking pony. She was 13.2, hands high. And it was a terrible decision. She was parrot-mouthed and pigeon-toed, and she was an orphan, and we had to bottle feed her. And if anything was wrong, it was probably applied to her. But it was okay. She was naughty, and it was just one of those things. And my parents got her as a foal for, obviously, very cheap. We didn't have a lot of money, and we had braces on her legs and all kinds of things. And so that was my 12th birthday present. And I have very little idea of where it actually came from. I did have an uncle that married an aunt that wrote English, and I think maybe seeing that kind of inspired me a little bit. But I wanted a horse that could jump and perform in the hunter jumper disciplines and maybe do a little bit of dressage. And I had this pony who was a small racking pony with lots of issues. I loved her dearly, and she was amazing, and she taught me all these things. But you know, skill sets, not just about horse care because of her health issues, but just being a leader when you have a pony who is a little bit naughty. And she gave me so many experiences, and it was amazing, but it wasn't the discipline that I wanted to compete in. And so I'm a determined little gal. So I decided that I needed, no matter what it took or what it was going to have to do for me to get there, that I was going to get a horse that could jump. And at this particular point in time, I was raised on a dairy farm, as you can tell from the book title, and my dad was really set on me being a dairy farmer. And so he was like, I have no idea where this child's interest in horses came from, but here it is. And so he was really kind of trying to push the dairy, you know, issue. And so he didn't want to give me a lot of money for my horses, so I started raising 4-H chickens and selling eggs. And so I was self-supporting myself to
an
a large
entrepreneur
extent.
at heart.
Yes, at an early age. And so I was trying to get riding lessons and different tack. And then when I was 16, this 4-H opportunity came along to write an essay and a 1-year training schedule and a 1-year financial budget. And it was sponsored not just by 4-H, but also by the Middle Tennessee Arabian Horse Association. And at that time, a lot of the Arabian Horse Associations were promoting programs like Go with Geldings and that type of thing. And so they had reached out to a couple of farms to donate Arabian geldings to the contest. And so the first year, I did not even win because I had been selected, but they had to have a Middle Tennessee Arab Club member in the area where you live so they could check on the horse and do, you know, wellness checks because they have farms donating the horses and so on. So I tried again the second year, and that was when I was 16. And I won my absolute dream horse in a contest. And that was Kimbrough Arabians that donated him to the contest. And that's how my interest in Arabian horses got started. And once I had one, that's all I ever really wanted. I mean, it was just amazing.
Wow. So your writing, even at a young age at 16, earns you a horse of your own that could jump and do all the things that you wanted to do. And look at that grit right there. I mean, selling eggs and doing everything you needed to do to earn your horse. So that is like really cool. So this experience is what inspired you to write your first book, which is the history.
Yes. And so when I graduated from high school, Joanne, which was the horse's owner, she and her husband, Bill, actually owned the Gutniks, actually owns Kimbrough Arabians and the horses there. And when I was 18 and graduated from high school, I'd actually won Fox on a lease. And so he went back, and I was very interested in following him in his career. I couldn't afford to buy him. And so anyway, he went back.
Heartbreaking.
Oh, I was terrible. You know, I got to keep him a little longer than the year just because of how scheduling worked out with a horse show to turn him back in. But we had this fabulous year and few months together. And he was 11 when I got him, and the Gutniks had like 50 horses. And so he was only greenbroke, and I was young and stupid and didn't know that you weren't supposed to jump a green horse over 5-foot fences. I mean, who knows, right? So, you know, we were just doing all kinds of crazy things, and I got lucky and got by with it because I didn't know any better. But we went to a show, and I turned it back in, and I had become really close with the Gutniks over that year's time period. We had written letters, many letters, back and forth. I had gone to visit them, and she still offered. She knew that I really wanted to buy him, but just did not have the resources to do that. And so she was really good about letting me come and travel to his shows and visit him and all kinds of things. And then when I was 18, she actually gave me his half brother as a high school graduation present and invited me to come live with them and work on their farm. And so I did that full time the summer between high school and college, and then came out on some weekends during college and just really kind of got to know their breeding program and their operation and got to know them even better. And they became like family to me.
Wow. And what a great learning experience, right? Going and living and working and being around the horses on like an actual breeding operation. So
yes,
obviously the Arabian horse is embedded into your life and your love. And so that kind of leads me to ask you tell us about your current pony. And I'm a little curious about this donkey named Harmony too. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So I've had Sally for over a decade now, and she's a half Arabian mare, and we just we do everything. I have jumps set up here in an arena here at home, and we jump, and we get out occasionally to show. My schedule doesn't allow me to do that as often as I would like, but we trail ride, we work our cattle here on the farm, we gather them up. It's just really whatever I ask her to do, she is willing, just a willing partner, and I love her. I didn't think after I lost Fox, I was looking for a horse. When I lost him, he was 36, and we were, you know, he'd been a part of my life. Even she eventually, Joanne, we did kind of talk about that earlier, but Joanne actually did end up giving him to me later on. And so he'd been
which is detailed in the book Always Hope, which is a fantastic story, which we'll talk about a little bit.
That's right. Just a little plug there.
Yeah, so, a little plug there.
But yeah, so she gave him to me later on, and he had been a part of my life for, you know, over 25 years. And it was just a tremendous experience. And I don't ever expect to repeat it, but it was amazing. The memories, the experience, just the lifetime of love and the connection that I had with that horse. And I never, when I lost him, even though I'd gotten her at that point, she was kind of my transition horse because at that point he was quite advanced in age. And so I was getting something to, you know, replace him so he could enjoy his retirement years, although he still enjoy being ridden. I mean, just a few months before he passed, I was still hopping on him bareback and doing some light, fun stuff. But
36 is impressive too. I
yeah,
mean,
he was, genetics and good care.
yeah, I mean, that's
Go a long,
that's
long way.
incredible. 36 for a horse.
Yeah,
That's pretty.
that's advanced, absolutely.
Yeah.
So he was amazing, and so I get her, and I just didn't expect to develop that connection with an animal again like I had with him. I knew it was quite extraordinary, but she has definitely worked her way into my heart, and and I just that's one of the things that I love most about Arabians and her in particular is that no matter what I ask her to do, she is game. We're going to go out and bring the cows up today, or we're going to jump some fences, or we're going to trail ride. I even have a side saddle that I plunk on her every now and then, and just whatever I want to do. She goes out and she does that, and with a happy attitude, and she's my partner, and so that's amazing. And she has a pet donkey named Harmony, and it's definitely her pet. It's not mine. And it's her little mini me. And she is definitely been a learning experience for me. We kind of got her from a not so wonderful experience. And I always tell everybody when we found her on the local sales network online, she was not halter broken. She'd never been on a trailer. And we went to see her, and she was in this little small muddy pen, and had some hay and a tire and a little low run-in shed. And the owner goes in and catches her first. And it wasn't abuse or neglect or anything. I mean, her health was okay. It just wasn't, up to, great standards of horse care, so to speak. And so, but the owner goes in and catches her, and I'd already decided at that point, she's coming home with me. She's out of here. So it didn't matter what was wrong, if she had poor conformation or anything like that. This donkey is coming. And so we get the lead rope on her, and I'm thinking, I have no idea how we're getting her on this trailer and getting her out of here, but we'll see what happens. So got a butt rope, and my husband opened the door, and it was like she realized, I don't care where you're going, I'm going with you. And she hops on the trailer like she had been loaded on one her entire life.
Oh, wow. So she wanted to come home with you. And yeah. So why a donkey? You wanted to get a companion for Sally, is that right?
Yes. And she was on single horse, and I had one of my funny little terms for that. I had written a story about solo horse keeping for Equus at one point, and it was called Suddenly Single. And so that's kind of with Sally. She was single. Fox had passed away, and Sally was content. She's not really one to just go out and want a companion, horse like that right away. But I just felt like horses are herd animals, and she really, she needed something. And I didn't want to commit to getting another horse because my riding time is limited as it is. And I kind of tossed around a number of ideas and tried keeping her solo with some entertainment, like a ball to play with and things like that for a while, and wasn't really satisfied with that, and considered goats and chickens, and wasn't really satisfied with that either, and finally hit upon, a donkey would be kind of cool and kind of fun to do. So we got Harmony, and we got her home, and I've been using clicker training and working with her, and she's halter broken now, and we're starting to do all kinds of fun things with her. But she's definitely Sally's mini me, and follows her around and takes care of business here at the farm with her. So yeah, she's a little treat. It's kind of a funny little thing to have around.
That's wonderful. And we're definitely going to have to get a picture of Harmony and Sally for your show notes so people can see.
I will definitely send that.
Yeah,
I actually took some pictures, and it hasn't published yet. And but there's a story coming out in a future issue of Equus about the two of them. It's going to be a back page story, and the two of them and their relationship. And I'll definitely have to send you a link to that.
Please
when it
do.
comes out. But
I love reading
pictures
articles
that I took, and I will definitely send it to you.
Okay, good. Yes, we definitely need to include Harmony in your show notes so people can see your pony and with the love of her life, Sally. So that's really cool. Like you mentioned clicker training, and this is sort of a tangent for me to ask you another question that I have. We're both members of the American Horse Publications Conference, and every year they have we're both members of the American Horse Publications Organization, and every year they have this annual conference. And one of the coolest things about which is where Hope and I first met, actually, and started our relationship. But the coolest thing about this conference is they have excursions like the day before the conference kicks off. And they're always based on the local equestrian scene and what's going on there. And you learn so many really neat things. I think when it was here in Scottsdale, there was a mounted shooting.
Yes, I did that. That was so fun.
Yes, and I've seen the pictures from that. And then when we went to Maryland, there was, the
Hunt Cup.
The Hunt
The
Cup.
Maryland Hunt Cup course, yes.
Yes, so we went to see the Maryland Hunt Cup course, and we learned about, steeplechasing and all of that exciting stuff, and we did farm tours. And then just this year, it was in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and we went and we toured this big equestrian facility, but they had a professional horse trainer that was doing clicker training, which inspired all of us to really explore clicker training with our animals. And you just mentioned that you were doing that with Harmony, which is exciting. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the American Horse Publications and your membership there, which brings people together and creates these beautiful friendships like we have. But how has being a member of the AHP, is what we call it for short, helped you with your freelancing work? And then how did you first discover it and become a member? Like, how did you learn about the organization?
Sure. Well, the way that I first discovered the organization was some of the publications that I write for had been award winners. And I started poking around and doing a little bit of research and found out that they also had an individual member category. So when I started writing, I thought that I'm a pretty competitive, person, and I like to do awards programs and things like that. So I thought it would be something that I would enjoy, doing. And so that kind of inspired me to join them. And I did the half-year membership first, and the conference that year was already over. And then came to my first conference in 2017. And that was the year, I think in Arizona, with the cowboy mounted shooting.
Oh, that was your
my
first year too? That was my first year. Oh,
yes.
Wow. So we both met in our first years.
Yes. So that was amazing. And I loved it. And that was kind of what got me interested, in joining, was because it was there that I first started writing for some other publications outside of Equus, because I was able to meet in one central location all of the editors. And email is a great thing and all. And I have certainly pitched to publications and gotten writing assignments just by email, and I've never met the editor in person. But the vast majority have come from connections that I have made at the conference. And so I have met so many people, and it's just been an amazing experience for me from that aspect. I've certainly gained several clients just from talking about ideas, over dinner at the conference, or attending some sessions with one of the editors at a conference, or speed networking. And that's kind of like speed dating. And I don't know if you've ever taken part in that before, but it's kind of neat, just a one-on-one sit down, pitch some ideas, talk about some things back and forth in kind of a time setting. But the professional development is amazing too. I enjoy all the learning that goes on, and I always come back with things that I can implement, whether it's just refining how to pitch an idea to an editor, more successfully, that makes you more likely to get an assignment, or so on. And but I think most important are just the friendships that I've made too, even outside. I mean, there's you and our group of lady friends that have become really close just as a result of that. And I feel like I can pick up the phone or shoot an email or a text and get some advice right away on something, that I might need in terms of marketing, or just how did you handle the situation, or that type of thing. So I have nothing but good things to say.
Absolutely. And I feel exactly the same way. And the takeaway are these amazing friendships that have budded since, meeting people at the conference and all the opportunities. So it's so the American Horse Publications is a organization for equine media. So there's magazines, video production, authors are there, bloggers are there, anyone that touches, I don't know, how do you want to say it, like writing and
yes, or even marketing even as well. Yes.
And there's big brands that come, like Mane and Tail products. They do like a huge, lunch sponsorship every year, and you can learn about new events that are coming. Just pretty much anybody that touches the equine industry has like a presence there, which is a really cool way to meet people, connect with people, and build relationships,
Absolutely.
particularly for freelance writers. It's a great space to be in. So speaking of the American Horse Publications Conference, I wanted to talk about your newest book, Always Hope, because I remember it was our second year being at the conference together, and we were at a networking dinner, and we were sitting down at the table. And I remember when this book was just kind of like an idea you were shooting out there. Can you talk about where the idea came from? And it's been so fun watching your journey as this book came to fruition. Talk to us a little bit about what inspired Always Hope and the journey since that conversation at the American Horse Publications. Like, what's happened?
So it kind of started out with, and again, it was one of those things without a formal destination in mind. I had jotted down stories and thoughts from growing up on a farm for, many years. And then at the conference that year, I was sharing some of those stories with friends. So you were one of those friends, and you absolutely helped me come up with the title for my book, because we kind of brainstormed the titles there over dinner. And I was talking with some other friends, and they were just amazed. I guess if you didn't grow up on a farm, some of the stories I shared are really like, wow, that actually happened. So
this is a fascinating book. Like if you want to, I mean, I'm reading this book and I'm like, whoa, Hope is so cool. Like, she knows how to like fix a tractor and castrate a cow. I'm like, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, I just, and everybody was, and they're funny, looking back. I mean, at the time you're living it, and it's not really that funny at the time, but it was great to kind of share some of these experiences over dinner and just kind of talk about titles and that type of thing. So when I came home, I think you were writing at that time as well. You were into another book, and our friend Heather was into a book, and you guys actually got yours finished ahead of mine, and that was a great kick in the pants for me to finish, because I was like, I have got to do this. They have totally done this, and we were talking about it over dinner, and I need to finish this because I think this could be a really cool thing. So I started putting everything together, and I actually relied for editing as I wrote the book, and I was getting pretty far into it. I reached out to an editor from a magazine that I write with, and she picked it up. Lori Bonner used to work at Equus, and she was taking on some freelance projects. And so she agreed that when I got finished, she would take a look at the manuscript and do any editing and suggestions and things like that for me. And so I was really fortunate that the timing kind of hit just right for her to pick up a project like that. My daughter actually found my graphic designer for my cover, and that was a really kind of funny story. So I put an ad on Fiverr, and was just really scratching my head of, oh my goodness, where am I gonna find somebody that is really good and can kind of get what I want, the idea that I have in my mind for the cover of the book. And she's out to dinner with some family friends, and one of the family members happens to be talking about her career in graphic design. And so I get a text that she now knows a graphic designer. And so I said, well, you must get her telephone number. You must get it. And her name was Jordan Thomas. And so when Maddie got home and I secured the telephone number, and it wasn't but a day or so after that I reached out to her and said, hey, I have this idea. Would you be interested in doing that? And she came to my house, and we poured over book cover ideas and what message I was trying to convey and get out with my book. And she ended up just doing this amazing job. She formatted my book for me, helped me choose pictures for it out of a collection that I had, and just did a fantastic job with the cover that kind of conveys the story that I'm trying to tell.
That's fantastic. And do you have your cover there? Do you have your book there with you that you can hold up and show us? For those of you not watching on YouTube, Hope is going to hold up the cover to her book, and then I'll of course include that in the show notes too, so you can see the beautiful cover that she had designed. And what I think is so amazing is, like, as you're telling this story, it's like the universe kept opening up these opportunities for you as you were following this path, like the conversation at AHP, and then the relationships that you had built from being a member of the organization. One of the relationships you had became your editor, and then your daughter was out to dinner and she found your graphic designer. it's like, I believe if if you're following your path and you're living your dreams and you're looking and you're paying attention, that the universe, or, a higher energy or a higher power or whatever, provides you with what you need if you're just open and ready for it. And it seems like that's been exactly what's been going on for you with your book, Always Hope, which we're going to look at right now.
Yeah, I was kind of sad. I pulled out this picture on the cover. This is me and my first pony, Munchkin. And when I was 12, and like I mentioned, I got her for a birthday present. And, up until that point, I'd been riding everybody else's horse that I could get my hands on. But she was mine. And I was a little bit older in this picture, but anyway, not too long. And then on the back is me and Clarabelle. And she was my dairy cow that I showed, and I showed all of her calves as well. And so anyway, you can read all about them in the book too, but it just has a really nice feel, kind of conveys that agricultural background that's so important to me.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you this too, that the subtitle of Always Hope was so intriguing to me. It says, how dairy cows and Arabian horses inspired grit in a young girl's life. So I totally love the word grit. And can you talk to us a little bit about your definition of grit and how your childhood inspired you to have that grit? I mean, we've heard about your experience with Arabian horses, but let's hear a little bit more about you growing up on the farm and working with the dairy cows, and like where you got your grit.
Sure. Well, when we were kind of pitching around this idea of doing that podcast interview, I thought that would be kind of a really good idea, just to kind of, look up the Webster's dictionary definition of grit, and because you hear it a lot, but what does it really mean? And so loyal, courageous, those are just some of the terms that I kind of pulled out of the definition there. But when I was a kid, it was just, we did not have a lot of money. I mean, we were poor. I mean, there's no other way to say it. And we had 125 dairy cows, and that we had to be milked twice a day. And we had 332 acres, and we row cropped, and we raised our own feed for the cattle. And it was a lot. And obviously we didn't have money to hire help until later on. And so that help came from my brother and I at a very early age. And in fact, one of the stories that I shared that kind of stuns everybody that reads it is my dad did not think anything about putting me on a tractor. I was 3, almost 4 years old, and I'm driving the tractor by myself, in a field for the first time. And of course he's there, and he's standing by, and the tractor is going very slow. We called it granny gear. And I said, I can't reach the pedals. I'm not strong enough to do the controls, but I can hold the wheel straight, and I can go down to the end of the row, and he can be doing things in the field, and he can turn me around, and I can come back, and we're disking and that type of thing. And so Dad just did not think anything of this. His parents tied him on a tractor with a towel when he was 2 to accomplish the same thing. So this was no big deal. I was old enough to be doing these things at this point. And I think that's kind of a shocking story, today, because unless you've had that experience, because a lot of people would think that was just a terrible thing to do, but it was life. It was just something that we had to do to survive. And that's one of those things now that I can look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, and laugh about it. But, at the time it was just something that had to be done.
Mm-hmm. And I imagine those sort of experiences and growing up with, so much responsibility around keeping a family farm functioning created like the grit that you do have now. Like anything I set my mind to, I can accomplish. Yeah. And that's really incredible. And I loved reading these stories in your memoir, Always Hope, because they were fascinating. And it is an experience that I don't know what it's like to grow up on a farm. I mean, I know what it's like to be around animals, but your experiences are really cool and interesting. And I love getting that perspective of how you grew up and knowing more about you in that realm. It was fascinating. Writing a memoir, did you find it challenging at all to share some of those personal insights about your life? Like how did you, because you've written articles and you've sort of written stories and you've covered other nonfiction topics, but you were writing about yourself. Did you have any, challenges around that, or was it just easy to do because
No, some of it was actually, remembering that was one of my big concerns was, my parents still live in where I grew up in Bledsoe County in Tennessee. And one of the things that I was concerned about, and I kind of talk about this in the book, not the concern, but the issue is my dad was considered a Yankee. And my mom's family is one of these families that, one of the first, her ancestors were one of the first in the state of Tennessee, and certainly one of the first in the Sequatchie Valley. And then she goes out and she marries this Yankee that is not from anywhere, certainly acts different than everyone else. And it's just, we handled things differently, situations differently. And it kind of, it set me apart from friends and others. And so it was kind of, and I touch on that in the book a little bit. And I was concerned how conveying that would be taken by people who still live in the county, because the things that we were doing, on the farm, some other kids may have been doing, but we also handled things differently. We explored, for example, how we row cropped a different way, and brought some things in that might not have been considered there at the time, just because of the way Dad was raised and Dad's background. And so when I'm in kindergarten and elementary school and so on, some of the other kids, just because of how I talked a little bit more, a little less Southern, a little more Yankee, and how I acted and handled things was a little bit different. And I wondered how that would be conceived or perceived rather with some friends that, growing up there, when they read the book, would they take that the wrong way and see it a little bit differently than I actually meant it. It was just the fact of being different rather.
Yeah.
More than anything else.
And what you were writing about is a very small community where you
yes.
grew up in a very small town. And so you had to be sensitive in how you wrote things to be careful not to offend, right? Because
yes,
a lot
absolutely.
of people are still there. Yeah. That's very interesting. Something to consider for people writing memoirs. You're writing about people and a place and your truths, and, that's something that can come up. You can offend, so I can imagine that was sort of tricky.
Yeah. And I had some options, I could have made it more of a fiction piece or, change names or, that type of thing. And it took a lot of kind of digging and soul searching to come up with, just the right way to handle that. But I've been very, very fortunate. I had a book signing there recently, and I had a lot of folks come out that were very supportive. So hopefully I got it right. My piano teacher, my kindergarten teacher, a lot of people that I went to school with came out and bought copies of the book. So I think all is well. It was, but going through the process, it was definitely something to keep in mind.
Yeah, and it probably took grit, because did you have to get people's permission to write about them in this book, or how did that work?
Sure. So I actually just kind of, with friends, I kind of avoided names, to that extent, and kept it more situational rather than naming names. And then a lot of the people that, the rest of the people in the story are family members, for example, or who have passed on and no longer, have family members, they are to kind of read the story and be concerned about or anything. So I just kind of was really careful about how I handled it, if the story was shared, that it wasn't, something that
pointed straight at someone. That makes a whole lot of sense.
Yes, pointed a finger, so to speak. Yes.
That makes a whole lot of sense. So things to consider for people that are interested in writing a memoir. It's like you either have to get permission, or you have to kind of work your way around.
Figure a workaround.
Yeah, working your way around naming names, because you have to be sensitive about that. Which leads me to, you already mentioned, you had a very successful book signing there in your hometown. What other ways do you reach your readers? Like what resources or support would you recommend to authors to reach their readers, or the people that you think would be the right demographic for your book?
Sure. Well, one of the things that I have had a lot of fun with, and I do this on not all of my social media accounts, primarily Facebook and Instagram, but also I share on LinkedIn as well. But there were a number of pictures, for example, in my collection that I did not publish in my book. And so I have been taking those pictures on a weekly basis. In fact, I just finished the journey with that last week, but on a weekly basis, sharing an unpublished picture and a story that goes along with it that kind of leads to some more insight to a story that I shared in the book. And that's something that's been it's not only fun for me, but has been pretty successful, in terms of marketing. I've had a lot of comments, on that, and generated some following because of those, because people get to look at those and start to think, well, I would like to hear a little bit more about that story. And so that's kind of helped with marketing and public relations of the book too, but also been something that I really enjoyed.
That's true. That's really fun. Like if you want to see some fun pictures of Hope with her dairy cows and winning her 4-H ribbons and they're really fun flashback pictures. I've really enjoyed following that journey too. So that's great advice. So obviously book signings and then sharing more like behind the scenes and unpublished pictures from the story. That's a really great way to reach new people and inspire those that are already following you and reading your books. So I love that.
And I enjoy too. I have a book signing coming up in December at the Tennessee Farm Bureau Convention. And it's more about finding out and really understanding who your demographic is and marketing to that, because a lot of the people that come to the Farm Bureau conference, those are my people. That's my tribe too, because we all have an agricultural background and enjoy seeing that, promoted and shared in a positive and fun way. So that's a big part of it too, is just understanding who your people are that would enjoy reading your book.
Absolutely. And that's a great recommendation too, because, like everybody's books sort of appeal to a different sort of crowd. Like, it's like, so you
Absolutely.
have to figure out where those people are and go be with those people. I feel like face-to-face at book signings is like a really special way to connect.
Yes.
It's like social media is great for maybe reaching a broader audience, but like really being with the people and talking to them and creating a relationship face-to-face, I think is so important. So it's great that you're out there doing these events and sharing your story. I love it. So this is a question I have for you. You are a very busy woman. Like you are, just connecting for this, it's like, you're like, I have 45,000 things to do in order to, it's so funny. And I was like, it's okay, just breathe. We can work through this. It's like, you're worried about getting the questions in the bio back.
Yeah.
But we worked together and we worked it out and it was great. But you're a freelance writer, you're an author, you're a blogger, you're a horse owner, you raise cattle, you're a mother, you have a donkey, you're a classroom teacher. How do you juggle all this and how the heck do you find time to write? Because, a lot of the freelance stories that you're writing are very in depth and have that science base where you have to do the research. So do you have a routine? Like, how do you make sure that there's time for me time, but then also time to get your projects done in addition to all these other things you're doing?
It's a lot, but I wouldn't do it if it was, if I didn't enjoy it. So that's part of it is the fact that it does bring me joy to do. But I do have a routine. I start the mornings very early. Normally when I don't have anything else going on at school, my day starts at about 5 and I get up and kind of part of my me time is getting up and feeding Sally and Harmony and exercising and getting, spending a little time sipping my coffee and getting ready for work. And then I'm at work all day until, if I don't have something going on that I have to stay after school until a little after 3. And when I get home, that's a school time and then also writing time. So I'm usually doing both of those, particularly if I have an assignment, that's coming due that I need to interview somebody or maybe sit down and do some research on getting ready for an interview, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. So, and that's afternoons and sometimes if I know like right now, it gets dark early. So I might get in a little riding, a short ride before then and then come in and do those things. So it's all about scheduling and juggling but also being aware of, and something I'm kind of working on myself right now, of letting some things go and, and understanding that I don't have to do everything. I just need to do the things that are important to me. So absolutely.
That's fantastic. And I think a lot of women in particular struggle with I have to say yes, I have to do everything. I have to be responsible for all these things. And, it's so funny listening to you describe your schedule. You're talking about like my me time is feeding the horses and exercising, which sounds like responsibilities, but I totally get where you're coming from. Like when I'm out with my horses and spending time with them and cleaning, I mean, even cleaning the stalls, it's meditative, it's peaceful.
It is.
Even though it is a have to do, it's like, I want to do sort of thing.
Yes.
Right?
And riding Sally is absolutely part of that. That is extremely, therapeutic. And I laugh because I enjoy cleaning the dry lot more than I do cleaning my house, but that's okay.
I totally agree. Like I would rather clean stalls all day long than run the vacuum cleaner.
Yes, absolutely. But it is. And that's me time. And I've never been, growing up on a farm, there was not time for, inactivity. There was things that had to be done all the time. And so I don't really know what to do with myself with downtime. So my me time tends to be active, but it still ends up being me time and working out.
Yeah, no, I hear you. It's like, I don't know how to sit still either. Like I like to constantly be going or doing something, which I don't know if that's healthy or not, but like it's like I'm most satisfied when I'm accomplishing something or creating something or getting something done. It sounds like you're very similar.
Yes. Something about checking off the to-do list.
I love checking off or stretching the line through the to-do list. That like makes me like, yes, I don't know why.
It's a high.
It is. It really is. It's very cool. But I do take the time to sip the coffee. So I'm with you on that one. So you're very busy. You schedule your time. And it sounds like you're cramming it all in and loving it, right? Because, it doesn't feel, I think if you love what you're doing, it never feels like it's work, right? If you don't like what you're doing, then it's can be pretty miserable, but it sounds like you love what you're doing. But I did want to ask a couple of questions. So like, what to you is the hardest part about being a writer? And then, on the flip side, what is the best thing for you about being a writer, whether it's writing a freelance article or working on your books? Like,
I think the hardest part definitely is like we just talked about, just fitting that into the schedule or carving out that time, where I'm writing or interviewing or, talking or just developing a piece. But then once you get all the pieces of the puzzle together and start writing, then it starts becoming amazing again. So that's certainly, the hardest part. But the best part, I think, is just connecting with people. Like we talked about at a book signing, and that's just amazing. I read your story, I loved it. I bought this. Will you, sign a copy, or this sounds amazing. I can't wait to get it. That type of thing. That's huge. Mm-hmm. And then just, it's just the little victories too. I always enjoy getting a magazine in the mail when an article's out there. I don't know why, but it's just a little, hooray. But and it doesn't matter, if it's the 15th or the 30th or whatever time that you've done it. It's just a little something of seeing a project that you've worked on come to fruition and be out, and then hear later that it really resonates with the people who get the magazine.
Absolutely. And the thing about being a writer is it's a little scary too, right? You're putting your creative self out there, you're putting your, all this effort into writing something just to give it as a gift to others to read and for hopefully it to resonate with them, so to get that feedback that people are enjoying what you've written, I just, there's nothing like it. And,
no, there isn't.
Yeah. And congratulations, because you are also getting great feedback and acknowledgement, because Always Hope is an Equus Film Festival Literary Award nominee for this year. So we'll be excited and rooting for you there in Kentucky.
Well, thank you.
Coming up. Yeah. So lots of recognition and congratulations on the success that you've had. So this is I love this interview because this is a little bit different. We're talking about freelance writing, and this is something that any writer can get involved in and have a little additional income stream or another arm of revenue coming into their business. Would you talk a little bit about what advice would you give someone that's interested in maybe looking into doing some freelance work in order to create additional revenue? Like what would you suggest?
Well, first I would just say, go for it, absolutely. And then I would absolutely suggest maybe finding a friend and going as a guest to the American Horse Publications, conference, or, maybe joining and, going ahead and taking the leap and becoming a part of that organization, because that has been tremendous for me. I think certainly I got into it before I joined AHP, but that was on a very small scale. And I think I've gotten to where I am with my writing career because of AHP. And so if it's not something that's, horse related, find a blogging, organization, find conferences that you can attend and go to where you can really network and meet people face to face and kind of talk about your ideas, make some friendships, and see where it goes from there. Because I think that alone has been one of the single biggest indicators of, where things are going to go and any success that you're going to have is just making those contacts. Because if you have the credentials and the skills, it's certainly very doable, if you make yourself available.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a lot of like resources because it is journalism, right? So you would have to educate yourself on the framework for which to write stories, which is something that the American Horse Publications Conference does. They have tons of seminars and resources on how to do that, or how to pitch editors or publications. But I imagine there's probably lots of information. Obviously, anything's available on the internet these days. You could probably take some webinars, some free webinars on how to pitch, how to write a publication, pick up a couple books in order to do that. So, so if you're used to writing long form fiction or nonfiction books, you want to actually educate yourself on how to write for a magazine or a newspaper or what have you.
And it is different, writing for a book and writing a magazine article are two very, very different things. Mm-hmm. And, and I found that I struggled with that with my book, for example, because I'm used to working within a certain word count, mm-hmm. for a magazine article, and you don't have that restraint, when you're writing a book necessarily. So that is, that was a struggle for me, was to get out of that mindset of, okay, I've got to fit it in this many words. Yeah.
Right. You could be a little bit more free with your vocabulary. You didn't have to have such tight sentences. You could be a little bit more loose. I can totally see how that would be a struggle. Yeah. But any experience and exposure to writing, both I would imagine writing for a publication and then writing your own book is like an exploration, and only makes you better at writing because you learn how to do both. And, all writing is good for the creative soul. So, So what I'm hearing you say is it's fairly, I wouldn't say easy, but it's something that you can do for sure. You can write a book and you can freelance write, and there's opportunity out there that's available for people.
Yes.
Very cool. So I wanted to ask you this question. It's kind of open-ended, but what are you curious about right now? Like, what's next for you, or what are you interested in? What are you interested in taking on now?
Well, at last year's AHP conference, I started talking to one of the speakers, and one of the things that's great too, and I know we keep going back to AHP, but it's such an amazing organization.
It's the basis for a relationship too, right? So it only would naturally come into this. Yeah. So
she was outside of the horse industry, started in the horse industry and also outside of it now, and writes for USA education pieces for USA Today. And so we kind of spoke after the conference, and oddly enough, she's written not just for horse publications and education, but she's also written in other agricultural fields. And when I heard her talking about that, I thought, that would be really interesting to do, because there are some dairy publications out there, and certainly I have a huge background in education. So I've been thinking about possibly expanding into those fields, especially during the summer when I tend to have a little bit more free time because I'm off from school and can kind of explore things a little bit more. So pitching some ideas and thoughts that I have, reaching and kind of expanding outside of the horse industry a little bit.
Very cool. And that's also a possibility too, right? You don't have to stay in the lane. If something inspires you, you can step over to the other side. Very nice. Well, I wish you tons of luck on that, and I'm sure you'll be very successful. And so I wanted to ask you this too. I know we talked about some really interesting things about you growing up on a dairy farm, but is there something that a reader of your articles or your books would be surprised to learn about you?
Well, I think, kind of what we shared about is I'm very structured, but I can also be, if you kind of gotten a little undertone of that, a little bit of a risk taker too. I have some confidence about me from growing up and, my background and experiences growing up. And so sometimes there's just those moments when you just do it, regardless of what it is. I think that's huge. I think we had kind of a little funny side story with that, kind of shared about my trip home from the Maryland AHP, conference with at the airline, and my flight was canceled, and I rode home across the country with a gentleman I had not met before. And it was great. That I wouldn't have, don't do this at home. But it was kind of, it was just a neat experience. We ended up getting home, and it was fine. And of course I had a lot of things in place before that, but sometimes you just need to do things and just take action. And I think that would surprise some people because, I am normally a very structured person. I'm pretty open and there's not huge surprises, but outside of the structure, there's a kind of adventure and risk taker there too.
Yeah, a little bit of a wild side. I was like, getting in don't ride with strangers. I'm sure you put like some protective things in place, like your husband knew and your people knew.
Yeah, so we exchanged driver's licenses with our spouses, and my husband did a little sleuthing on Facebook, to make sure that there was no axe murder involved or anything like that.
Okay, I'm glad to hear this. But that's the thing. I believe that inherently most people are good, right? So it's like, yes. I think we've grown to be naturally fearful of things, and obviously you did the right thing, and you people knew where you were, and you made sure your husband sleuthed, and
we kept in touch, and, during the trip.
But you did something pretty, spontaneous, and I think sometimes we need more of that in our lives. So good on you. So you're a bit of a wild child. That grit comes flying out when you least expect it. You're a whole lot of fun, Hope, and I've so enjoyed our friendship, and we get giggly together at conferences.
We do, and it's a lot of fun. I just I enjoy it so much. I wish we got together more because the conferences when we do see each other are like a big reunion of sorts, and it's really nice. It really is.
And for anybody thinking about joining too, I did want to mention too, it is such a friendly organization. I mean, anybody involved in horses knows that, we're a small community, but we're a welcoming, open community. And AHP is just like that. Everyone is friendly and takes you under their wing. And when you're a first time member to the conference, they give you like a little special badge that says VIP.
Yes, VIP. Yes.
So everybody knows it's your first time. And so everybody comes up to you and they're like, welcome, it's such a cool organization. And, the excursions, my first year, I didn't do the excursion, the mounted shooting, and I didn't know, right, just how cool those were. So always do the excursion because you learn something about the region that you're in, but, like a different, aspect to horses that your discipline may never give you the opportunity to touch. So like definitely check out the excursions. They're a whole lot.
And it's impactful too. I mean, those experiences, especially like the cowboy mounted shooting, I would never have thought that I could have done that. But when they said they were looking for riders, pick me. I could ride, and I've shot a gun, but never simultaneously shot a gun and ridden a horse. So it was great. It was just another thing. Okay, I can do this too. So
yeah, I love that. You're great. That's so awesome. So one last question. Is there anything I should have asked but didn't?
Oh, no, I just, it's amazing to live here. Just, we talked a little bit about living on a century farm. We recently got our recognition from the Tennessee Department of Agriculture and of being a century farm, and just kind of living here in the, the center of my husband's family's farm has just been amazing experience, particularly for me, because even though, we kind of talked about in my book how my family, part of my family didn't have the roots, in the valley. And so this is kind of like a different experience for me, kind of a homecoming to live here on the farm. And we remodeled his grandparents' farmhouse. It was built in 1927. And so even that, just the opportunity and experience to live in the house. And I think it even lends to my creativity a bit because, I certainly have some more fodder for, stories and ideas and things like that. So, it's amazing to look out the window. We haven't always lived here. We've been here a couple of years, and I finally have the horses aren't on one farm while we live in a separate house, and I have Sally and Harmony and the cattle and the dogs right outside the back door, and it's just it's amazing, and I'm loving it.
That is so exciting. And then, so how many acres are you on, and how many cattle do you have?
Well, we actually have a couple of farms. This one has been in operation for, like I said, 195 years.
That's
And
amazing. I love that. The history behind that.
And it was really neat. My husband and daughter actually traced that back because that was something, all the, the transfers, hand me down from one family to another of the property. And
there's a story right there. Your next.
Yes, I know, right?
Your next book. I mean, this is awesome.
It was huge. And so they did the research and got that going. And then we also have a farm that belonged, my husband's dad actually got it when he was in high school. And so that was, kind of a little story in itself. So we have the two different places, and we live on one and farm the other one. But grand total, we have a little over 100 acres. And then we have here on our property, we have a cow-calf operation, which means that we raise the calves up to a certain age before they go to a feedlot. And so that's kind of their next step. But we have 19 cows up here, and we have 24 calves. And then at our other farm, we have about 14 head, and all black Angus. And it's just, it's nice. I kind of jokingly say the dairy farm was very difficult growing up, and it was full on all the time. And so beef farming is a little different. It's not quite as intense. And I told my husband, his family actually dairy farmed too before they beef farmed. And I said, if you had still had the dairy, I think that would probably been a deal breaker. But not, not really. But it's just because of the level of labor intensity that's involved. But we kind of laugh about that. But because generationally, our little side story there. Generationally, my dad met his dad and grandfather before we even knew of each other's existence, because when they came and were starting their dairy, they came down here to talk to them and get some ideas and that kind of thing. So it was just kind of neat how that the generations kind of knew each other, and things kind of work out to happen like they're supposed to.
That's fantastic. I mean, the whole story that you've been sharing with us as we've followed this journey, it just feels like, I don't know what you want to call it, but like it just, things kept opening up and you stepped through and you were it's like your path was like there waiting for you to shake its hand and step through. And, like the writing came from your love of it, but then it just kept opening up doorways, and then your, family history and the kind of life you're living now, and how, your husband. And it's so beautiful. And I highly recommend Hope's memoir, Always Hope, to anybody that's fascinated by this conversation. It was fascinating look at like what life was like and for back then, and what farming life is like, and what it was like growing up, which I think we've lost a lot of those, hands in the earth, gritty kind of things. And people that are growing up now, they don't like to get dirty. They don't know what it's like to be around animals, so it's just a really fascinating look.
It's amazing. Yeah. When you just kind of take a step back and, and take a moment to take it in. And that's, but yeah, I hope to, I teach high school students, and, I hope too that they will kind of get something from it as well, because it's hard to get those experiences in the kind of society that, we live in now. But I think it's important. You can do other things, as well, certainly, to kind of develop those same skill sets. But it's just, it's important to record and document, I think, and just to kind of know what it used to be, like versus now.
Absolutely. And you've done a wonderful job of that in your book. And I love it. So we are coming to the end of our interview. So I wanted to ask people ask you, Hope, I'm sorry, where people who are interested in your books can find you, your work around your freelance writing career, and, get to know you and follow you on your website and social media. Share with us a little bit about where folks can find you.
Sure. So I have an author page on Amazon that I'm really excited about, because I'm just starting to tweak and generate some things with that. And so absolutely, you can follow me on Amazon. I have, it's Hope Ellis-Ashburn on Amazon. And then on Facebook, I have Red Horse on a Red Hill. And that is also Facebook and Instagram. And on Twitter, it's Hope Ashburn. And then redhorseonaredhill.com is my blog. And I try to share all my magazine articles there that I've written. So, if you're a horse owner and you're interested in some educational pieces or just true stories or anything like that, you can go and take a look around there and see what's going on.
Wonderful. And I will make sure to link to all of those places so you can gallop over and check out Hope's work in the show notes to the show. And Hope, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really value our friendship, and I love the partnership that we've developed in like this great group of people who are taking care of each other and answering questions and being support systems. And, I just honor your friendship. So thank you for your time today and for being on the show. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much. I love being here. And anytime we get to connect, it doesn't matter what it is. I love it. And so, and I treasure you, and I treasure our friendships that we have developed with you and our group of friends from HP. It's amazing.
It is. And I wish you a very happy weekend. And I hope that you get some me time and some great horsey time. And I cannot wait to share those pictures of Sally and Harmony.
Yes, I will send that to you right away.
And I would love some pictures of the farm too, if you have those to share, so I can include a couple of those in your show notes too, because you have such a fascinating story. And I think people would be really excited to see those pictures.
All right. Very good. I'll see what I can find for you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Hope. And you have a lovely rest of your weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us this week on the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast. I hope you enjoy these Q&A sessions with wonderful equine authors who love all things horses and writing, just like me. Visit my website, carlycadecreative.com, where you can read the show notes, and make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you so much for your support. Want a free guide to secrets of horsebook authors? Gallop over to carlycadecreative.com/wisdom to have author advice delivered instantly to your inbox. If you are an author who writes about horses and would like to be spotlighted, please let me know. Visit my contact page at carlycadecreative.com to fill out a request. I'd be happy to have you on the show too. Thank you for tuning in to the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast. See you next time. I'm your host, Carly Kade. Creative writing makes my spurs jingle.